Now, Ghana is looking at the possibility of reopening its airspace to international flights from September should current trends in COVID-19 cases continue. With remarkable improvements also made in the fight against the virus. Though domestic flights resumed amid the adherence to strict protocols early May, international flights have been barred since President Akufo-Addo announced border closures back in March. Now, for the airline industry, the adverse effects of COVID-19, while felt internationally, leading to disruptions, the ramifications on the domestic industry are equally biting, with cost-cutting measures introduced by airline companies to keep afloat. Joining us is aviation industry analyst Dominic Andor. Mr. Andor, thanks for joining us. My first question would be is this welcome news for the industry? Right, so we will hear from the Deputy Information Minister, Pius Hajide, who says that simulations are some of the activities that will take place ahead of this opening.
Are involved, but we need to know if we can deal with the possible, and I said we have to work with a number. For instance, you can check, this may be the background, the benchmark, maybe that, okay, out of the persons who have come under mandatory quarantine, how many have ended up testing positive? So you can use that number and come to a rough estimate as to the number of possible positive cases, even though they may come in with a negative test. You can estimate a certain X percentage of positives, and you have to make a determination how to manage those. And that is where the simulation comes in. We are not simulating the numbers that will arrive. We are simulating the numbers that may test positive, and how do we manage those going forward? Because now the arrivals are on a daily basis. So, and if you're looking just at even quarantining those who test positive, what facilities are you going to use? And do we have enough of those facilities? Do we have to make allocations for the use of other facilities and so on and so forth? So those are the critical areas of consideration, and that is why a simulation may be useful. We know.
Okay, finally, Mr. Hatsday, the president commented about.
So live on JoyNews today. Now, let's hear again from Pius Hajide, who is talking about the interventions that have been introduced by government.
The presentation of the mid-year review and supplementary estimates, the minister responsible for finance has made some provisions for some emergency expenditure relative to COVID-19. His Excellency the President is of the view that it takes responsible and responsive governments to meet people at their times or the points of needs in times like this. And ours is a responsive and responsible government, and he intends to spare no cost to mitigate and ameliorate the sufferings of the people of Ghana. So from the national coffers, we shall make provisions for the provision of the hot meal for the over 500,000 students and the over 100 instructors who are involved with the basic education at this point.
Do we know those who are going to cook the meals? We know that for the primary school levels, there's school feeding program ongoing. Are we now going to look for caterers to cater for the junior high and senior high school levels, or you're thinking of extending the contract of the persons who feed the basic school level, that's a primary level, to include the junior high and senior high school levels?
Well, like His Excellency said yesterday, the instructions have gone to the ministry responsible for children and children protection and gender, and she will make this determination. Coincidentally, that ministry also coordinates the school feeding program.
Exactly.
And so I'm sure that they are better placed to speak directly to what will happen now.
To include the junior high and senior high school levels.
To join us on Zoom for a quick analysis of this is Dr. Benedict Calistego, an epidemiologist and senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Medical School. Dr. Calistego, thanks for joining us. Now, in the first place, you don't seem to agree that evidence of a reduction in active cases brings hope? Dr. Tego, can you unmute your microphone? So what you just saw on air is the breakdown of the new cases as per the date that they were recorded. On the 4th of August 2020, we had 547 new cases. That number has tapered down steadily to 112. That's on the 13th of August, the last reported date. We've also seen a drastic reduction in the number of active cases. That's a number that government has been emphasizing on over the weeks, that every time we get a new update on a number of cases, we find the number of active cases going down. The latest that we have, as we said earlier, is that there are 4 regions which are actually COVID-19 free. There are 4 regions which currently do not have any reported case of COVID-19. All of these issues combined sort of inform this decision that government has made to further ease the restrictions. So, of course, the opening of the border, the air border is not the only change that we are going to see. There's also the increase on the limit of persons who can gather in public places for award ceremonies, for celebrations, and what have you. So we have on our screen now the number of active cases. On the 4th of August, just at the beginning of this month, we had 3,528 active cases. Again, that number has dropped to 1,906. What you want to take interest in is that it has been steadily dropping over the day. So we lost 200 active cases dropped off in one day. Then it's another 300 dropped off in another day. The next day it went down by the next day it went up on the 7th of August. It went up to 3,256, but steadily it has now come down to 1,906. This, according to government, is informing the decision to further ease restrictions. And of course, it goes without saying that President Akufo-Addo is touting his government's efficiency in managing Ghana's COVID-19 crisis, which he says has seen a significant change. Right. So we will now go to Dr. Benedict Calistego. Dr. Calistego, what do you make of this rate of decline in active cases?
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers. I hope you can hear me now.
Loud and clear.
Right. I think we need to tread cautiously because what we are being presented with is just part of the picture and not the entire picture. And let me explain myself. Whenever we are given the number of active cases, it would have been useful if we are told the number of tests that are being conducted as well. Because at the start of this epidemic, we were testing aggressively, we were picking up a lot more cases. Our active cases are a direct product of our testing rates. So if we have reduced our testing, obviously we should expect the number of cases we are picking up to also drop. If we decide to stop testing today, give ourselves another 14 days, there will be no more active cases in Ghana per the new rules for discharging patients. Does it mean there is nobody with the virus in the country? Obviously not. What we need to be doing or telling the people is that these are the people we have tested. For every disease that can be transmitted, there are 2 groups of people we worry about. One, those who have been diagnosed, we call them the active or known cases. And then those we don't even know have the disease because we haven't tested and diagnosed them. These are the people who harbor the virus, have the capacity to transmit them, but we don't know about them. We call them the carriers. Now, for the active cases, they are not a threat because we have identified them. We would put in the necessary precautionary measures, isolate and treat them. However, for those who are harboring the virus and we do not know, they are the threat. And this is what we should be worrying about. Because bear in mind, more than half of even the cases we have diagnosed were asymptomatic. They didn't show any signs and symptoms. So it's possible there are people in the communities who are harboring the virus and are not showing signs and symptoms. So to come out and say boldly that 4 regions have no cases, I find that problematic in the sense that we have not tested every single individual in those regions.
Right.
And therefore, at best, we could say that amongst those who have been tested, no cases have been identified.
Right.
We have obvious limitations when it comes to testing. And we should make this limitation known when we are putting forth our results so that people would interpret these results in the light of that limitation.
Dr. Calistego, quick one there. We know that under routine surveillance, whenever people report to the hospital with symptoms similar to COVID, they will be tested for the disease. Granted, it may not be as rigorous as the enhanced surveillance, which you referred to earlier, can discover asymptomatic people. But those numbers were going up. Those numbers from routine surveillance were going up as well as the numbers from the enhanced surveillance. So if that is going down, is that not an indication that there's something correct going on?
I am not debating the fact that there is something correct going on. My worry is about our interpretation of the data. If you ask us to focus on active cases, for me, that is not a bother. The active cases are not my problem because we have identified them, we are putting in the necessary measures. However, there are communities or there are people within the communities who may be carrying the virus. You talked about routine surveillance, people being picked up when they go to the hospital. For everybody, it's every single person who reports to the hospital, there may be 5 or more people with the same problem who will never report.
Okay.
And there are others who may never show any signs that would warrant them even going to the hospital.
Right.
So we need to tread cautiously. That is my caution.
Dr. Benedict Calistego, thank you very much for joining us. He's an epidemiologist and senior lecturer at University of Ghana Medical School. Now, we also do know opening up Ghana's airspace will have some positive implications for the airline industry. But how hugely have we been affected by the pandemic in the first place? Dominic Ando is an aviation industry analyst. He also joins us via Zoom. What was the situation before COVID, and how have we been vastly affected, Mr. Ando?
Hello, hi, good afternoon.
Before COVID, and how have we been affected?
2019 was one of the highest grossing year for the industry, especially in the light of the year of return. The airline industry rigged in a lot of money. However, when COVID set in and then borders were closed somewhere in March, between March and June ending, international airlines had lost almost $400 million in potential revenue between March and June ending. With the extension of the border closure between June ending to possibly what we expect September, it means that airlines are going to lose approximately $200 million more in potential revenue, because averagely they gross about $100 million in potential revenue. I'm talking about international airlines. This also affected domestic airlines when the border was closed somewhere in March, April. However, it was opened. So they've been operating. Africa World Airlines and Passion Air have been operating for the last 2 months. So yes, of course, they are raking in money. And the new measure that came in that said, okay, now they can take full load of passengers really helped. Because initially when the borders were, when the airspace was open for domestic flights, what it meant was that they had to reduce their load factor significantly. Meaning that, for instance, if Passion was able to take 78 passengers, now Passion was limited to taking just about 48 instead of 78, which meant that they were losing revenue on the other 30 passengers they were not able to carry because of social distancing. However, with the new directive 2 weeks ago, where they are able to take full load of passengers, is really helping the domestic sector. The international side too, we expect that if all the protocols are put in place by the health ministry and the aviation authorities, it means that hopefully by September they will start operating. Otherwise, they'll keep losing potential revenue of averagely $100 million every month.
To end even after reopening, right? Because we know that after 9/11, Mr. Ando, it took 3 years for airline capacity to be restored to full. That means that the flights were taking off, but the planes were not full.
To be sincere with you, with this current pandemic, we don't expect the industry to recover in a year or two. In fact, Lufthansa Consulting estimates that this will be over somewhere 2024 for us to return to pre-COVID load factor levels, which means that for us to re-attain what we did in 2019, we're looking at somewhere 2024 to get to that level again. IATA, which is an association of airlines, international airlines, also estimates that the aftershock of this current pandemic will last for the next 2-3 years, which means, yes, the industry will recover gradually, but we expect to hit the 2019 figures somewhere in 2024.
Now, Mr. Ando, also we find that after this major shock that was 9/11, it took 8 years, according to the Wall Street Journal, for the airline fare, the air ticket fare, to be competitive again. What would your advice be for local players? Do we cut down the pricing to encourage people to board the flights, or they try and save some money by charging at the same rate?
Okay, there are two things here. On the domestic side, I mean, generally, cost of operation for airlines are really high. The margins are very small. Imagine operating an industry where the margins are between 1, 2, 3, maximum 4% per annum. So for domestic airlines, yes, the cost of operation is high. We can't say they should slash fares, but we can do more to stimulate the market by doing other marketing activations or product activations or giving some freebies here and there, trying to stimulate the market generally to get people flying domestically again. For international, on the international market, I mean, they have to look at certain key elements. Pricing, can we work around the pricing? And the pricing can only be reduced where they're able to take full load. That means that they don't have to take half capacity, etc. Otherwise, it's their cost. But if the airlines are taking full load, then they can look at pricing, thinking of pricing a bit, a lot more marketing, promote demand, and get people flying again. The key here is that people they may be afraid to travel. Those who definitely travel are those who have to travel. People who have businesses abroad that they have to go and take care of, or people who have businesses here that they have to come and take care of. Academics who have to be here to work. Leisure market is very down.
Right.
People travel, etc. And that's the particular segment of the market that a lot needs to be done to stimulate it.
Dominic Ando, thank you very much for joining us. Industry analyst here in Ghana.
Hello there, it's time for business. I'm Charles Aite. Now, President Akufo-Addo has explained Ghana's preparedness to support the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement area, especially as Ghana hands over the Africa Trade House to the Africa Union Commission. He was speaking at an ongoing ceremony which is going to facilitate this particular exercise.
We gathered in Niamey, capital of the Republic of Niger, on 7th July 2019, at the 12th extraordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the AU, where Ghana was selected by her peers to play host to the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Indeed, for a country generally acknowledged as the pioneer of modern Pan-Africanism, under the dynamic leadership of our first president, Kwame Nkrumah, a country whose people made great sacrifices to spearhead the struggle for the liberation of the African continent from colonialism, imperialism, and the racist system of apartheid. This is the first time in our 63 years of nationhood and in the 57 years of the founding of the Organization of African Unity, OAU, the precursor to the AU, that we have the responsibility and privilege of hosting an important Pan-African institution. So today is an auspicious day for Ghana, and on behalf of the Ghanaian people and their government, I express our deep appreciation once again to the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the AU for its decision. I thank also my fellow Ghanaians, the first President of Ghana's Fourth Republic, His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings, the second President of the Fourth Republic, His Excellency John Agyekum Kufuor, former First Lady, Her Excellency Nana Konadu Agyeman Rawlings, the Asantehene Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, the Minister for Trade and Industry, Alan Kyerematen, who brilliantly led Ghana's efforts, and other officials of government for the diverse roles they played in helping to promote Ghana's successful bid. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in Niamey, I assure that Ghana, as caretaker of the Secretariat, will put all the requisite facilities at its disposal so that it could run as a world-class organization. Indeed, as part of the hosting agreement, Ghana was requested by the Assembly to work with the AU Commission to ensure an expeditious and efficient process of establishing a permanent secretariat for the AfCTA in Accra. Ghana has fully discharged all her obligations and commitments agreed with the AU Commission.
Well, earlier on, the Secretary-General of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, Wamkele Mene, presented his credentials to the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Now, this formally gives him the purview to begin operations here in the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement area. His presentation preceded the official handing over ceremony of the Africa Trade House.
It's a pleasure to finally be able to be here. I think that the fact that Ghana has been awarded by the Assembly of Heads of States the right to host the one of the main flagship projects of the African Union, which is the AfCTA Secretariat, speaks volumes about this country, the history of Pan-Africanism that would be incomplete without Ghana in the vanguard. And so it is an absolute honor for me to be the first Secretary General in Accra, in Ghana, consistent with that spirit of Pan-Africanism.
I believe this is probably the most important AU institution, because from the very onset of the OAU to the AU, one of the key things on the agenda has been the trade, economic integration and trade, intra-African trade, because we all agree that this is what will propel us into the self-reliant, developed Africa that we all want.
And we have more on the Continental Africa Trade Union and the handing over of the Africa Trade House on the marketplace at 1 p.m. You will want to stay tuned for that. In the meantime, that's how we end business with me, Charles Aite. Sports is up next.